Welcome back to The Vote Matters. I'm your host, Tia Sneem, and sitting alongside me today is the producer. And here at TVM, we discuss political topics through a nonpartisan and entertaining manner to empower you, the voter. And today's breakdown is the wildness of the recent election.
Yeah, wow. What an election. There was a lot of build-up to that election, and it's just amazing. Like, you had the lawfare, you had the Kamala taking over Biden, you had all of these just things that were going up to that day of the election that were happening, and then just amazing. Just an amazing last 9 months, and then to culminate the way they did, it was incredible. What did you think of election night itself?
Well, to be frank with you, I was not too shocked when I saw Trump take such a large lead in the very beginning. I believe when I first took a look, it was 123 to 23 or something like that, and I just kept seeing that lead continue to expand and expand and expand. But what blew my mind was more so when I saw the House and the Senate go red as well.
Yeah, it was an electoral landslide, right? Mm-hmm. The Democrats were very much counting on the blue wall, right? They were looking for Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota to sort of keep them in power. And then what happens is you just start seeing them sort of go from blue to red, unbelievable. And then not only did he take that, he took North Carolina, he took Georgia, Nevada, and
Arizona.
Nevada, that one was the most impressive. And it's just because you're looking at the culinary unions down there. It's really heavy union when it comes to Nevada, just because of all of the hotels, Vegas, things like that. And they really do vote mostly blue. To see that flip, that's crazy. That was crazy. And the Senate race in Nevada was absolutely a nail biter. I think the lady's name was Ross. I think she ultimately, prevailed. But unbelievable that it was so close across the board. Unbelievable.
Yeah, and then you also have I remember even peering in and seeing Virginia and Minnesota being much closer races than they have been in the past, right? I remember seeing a stat where it said Minnesota has not been flipped in, I believe, 7 presidential elections. And then you see, because Tim Walz is from Minnesota, and it just was not going the way that I thought it was going to go. So, but yeah, what a turn of events. I was not too surprised Trump won, but I was surprised that sea of red kind of just came out of nowhere and grasped the nation.
I don't know if it didn't come out of nowhere. And I think this was a conversation we sort of had on the side. There were certain propositions in a lot of states, a lot of them were about, get tough on crime type of propositions. And clearly that drew a lot of people to the ballot box because, the problems with the inner cities, the problems with our cities, and the crime, the way it has been, the way it's just sort of demolished retail, something had to give, right? And I think putting those on the ballots, clearly people wanted change. Clearly people wanted to see a different stance when it came to crime, right? And boy, that was amazing. Don't get me wrong. I think they have compassion, but there is a point where it's like you cannot be compassionate to your detriment. You cannot spite your face by cutting off your nose, right? You can't do those things. Maybe it's the reverse. You cut off your nose to spite your face. I can't remember. But that's what it felt. It just felt like people wanted to see a change. They didn't want to see a continuation of what they've already been dealing with.
Mm-hmm. And you also see, in Los Angeles, right? Who was it that was just recently removed from office?
Well, 2 really interesting ones. I believe it's Breed, the mayor of San Francisco. San Francisco is just liberal, right? And she's very liberal. She actually comes from she's very wealthy. So she has the ability to run a good campaign. But I think where that city's sort of at right now, that just ended her sort of political career. Mm-hmm. She basically let it go too far, didn't have enough time to correct her ways, and the people of the city just said, done, you're out of here. Now, they still elected a Democrat, but the person is definitely not as liberal as Breed. Then you look at George Gascon, right? I think he is the Attorney General for Los Angeles, and they just said, enough, we're done, out of here, you know. And you cannot basically have this soft on crime policy. But, you know, it's not that, hey, soft on crime, it's like there was no prosecution. People were just basically getting arrested. And at a certain point, even the police were like, why do I arrest him? Because it's just a lot of paperwork. And the guy's not going to get prosecuted anyways, because the DA says we're not going to prosecute. So you definitely see that a lot of people were just like, that's ridiculous, right? That there are no consequences for bad actions. And when you don't have consequences for bad actions, there's no mechanism for correcting. There's no reason to correct your habit. And believe me, it's not trying to say, you know, these people don't deserve second chances or, but you definitely, you can't just turn a blind eye to it. And I think that's what a lot of people are like, no more.
So that's one of the big takeaways from this current election was you feel that people were over, because it didn't seem like it was just on Los Angeles or just in California. It seemed like a lot of people have been trying to make a difference with the crime rates that have been going on, right?
I mean, the spreads normally that you would see in really blue, deep blue states like New York, California, Illinois, New Jersey, right? They weren't that big. I mean, people, they're sort of like, no, this is wrong. And really, I don't think it was like, hey, we're for Trump. I think it was just a, hey, this is not going in the right direction. This path is, and forget it. We're not going to go down this path anymore. We're done. And if Trump happens to be the alternative, so be it, you know. But I don't think it was like, you know.
That's so funny because it's like the irony, right? It's kind of ironic from like the 2020 election where everyone's like Biden over Trump, right? Because they're like, well, we just can't stand Trump. And now it's like the reverse of it.
It is. It is funny. And then, you know, to come away with the popular vote the way he did. I mean, it was just, if you were to look at, like, you watch like TV, all the news channels, like the pundits and stuff like that, they were just sitting there. You know, normally they go into that beard scratching, you know, not this time, man. They're like, they looked dumbfounded. Like they just had no understanding of what had happened on that election night. And I think the most dominant thing, it's not enough that he won the presidency, that he had a landslide in electoral votes, that he had the popular vote, that he basically flipped the Senate, and that he kept the Congress, and that you have a sea of red for all the counties that were flipping all these local races, right? Unbelievable. But it all happened one night, right? Like last couple elections have been taking days to figure out, right? Not this time, man. It was just, people are just like, no, done. It was, you know, by 10 o'clock, I was sitting there, you know, getting my popcorn ready for a long night, you know, ready to watch the TV, stay up till late. I get there and it's like, the bell was rung. It's over, done. He's won. And I'm like, wow, it's not even, you know, 10, 11 o'clock here in Pacific Standard Time, and they've called it.
Yeah.
Unreal. That's how, that is, and I'm not trying to say, hey, Trump's the man, right? Clearly, the people had had enough. And I really think that is exactly what that election was all about.
Yeah.
Unreal election.
So what happens going forward now? Now that we have a second Trump term, completely new administration coming in, you know, what can the American people kind of like get ready to see?
Well, when you look at like what they're going to see is a lot of things that he sort of campaigned on. So clearly he's going to lock that border down, right? And I think he already nominated a border czar. Holmes, I think, is the gentleman. He looks like a pit bull, man. I mean, seriously, that guy, unbelievable. And then he's already moving to fill his cabinet in, and he's basically asking the Senate to just sort of give him carte blanche right now. He's saying, you know, let's not go through the Senate process, but let's just sort of get these people in office, and then we'll process them as we go, right? So that he can get up and running really quick. And the Senate, since it's red, is sort of in agreement with this. So in a way, it's unbelievable. He's able to move so much faster. Like, if you think about his first administration, right, and you hear him talking about this, I think it was on the Joe Rogan podcast. He said when he first got into office, he didn't realize the vetting process. Like, not only is it that you have to go through the Senate to get your people nominated, like you get them nominated, and they still have to get vetted, and then they have to get a vote, and then they have to get into the. But you also have to have all this clearance, right? They have to vet you and go through your background check. They have to make sure you have the right security clearances. They have to give you the right security clearances. And that whole process takes time and time and time. And so that really, I think in his first administration, he didn't realize that. And so he had to sort of pull people from the ranks and files of the political machine in order to fill his cabinet. And that's why I think the cabinet the first time wasn't as great as it could have been, just because he had to pull from the political machine itself. This time's different. It doesn't seem like he's got people already vetted. He's got everything sort of already ready to go. And he's got the people who are going to be able to get nominated very quickly. He knows who's on, like, it's not on his side. I think it's for his agenda. And the agenda really is to make America great. So if that's his agenda, you know, that's sort of the metrics that we got to hold him accountable to, right? And so, you know, it's really interesting. He's already gotten certain people that he's looking to get nominated. Secretary of State, which is just an absolutely massive position in our government. He's looking for Marco Rubio. And I think that guy's, I like Marco Rubio. You know, he's the senator from Florida.
And you think he's fit to take on a position like that?
Secretary of State, yeah. Oh, yeah. He's got I think he's gotten 2 terms in the Senate, and I think he's on his 3rd term right now. So he's got a lot of experience in politics just from a senatorial perspective. So he knows all of the committees. He knows the ins and outs of who are the people that you need to reach out to and talk to in order to get things done, right? And that's the key thing with the Secretary of State. You really are the person that is trying to, like on a chessboard, move the pieces in the right way, right? Versus, I think these other secretaries generally are functions of specific branches within the government, right? So RFK Jr. is going to be the Secretary of Health. What an awesome job for him. I'm really happy for that role. I think I like RFK. I mean, how do you like RFK Jr.?
Yeah, no, I'm a fan as well.
Yeah, I think he speaks his mind. I think he's very blunt. He comes off somewhat political, but he actually comes off more authentic. So that's the one thing I think I really like about him a lot. He's got a couple really big positions he's got to fill. So one of them is definitely, it looks like Homeland Security Secretary, and that's getting rid of Mayorkas, which that guy was pure entertainment watching.
The bald man.
Oh, my gosh.
The leprechaun.
He can never answer a question. Absolute entertainment, but an absolute disaster for the United States, right? And I think he's looking for Kristi Noem from North Dakota to fill his position. I don't know enough about her, but I noticed that he's taking things from safe areas so that they can get backfilled with Republicans, so that the Republican power doesn't sort of get bled by taking people from key states or states that would be vulnerable.
Well, I think that's the most interesting thing about this current, like, Trump's administration, is most of them were not originally from the Republican Party, right? Like, you have RFK Jr. that was not originally Republican. Even Donald Trump was not originally Republican. I don't know too much about Vivek, but it seems like there's a lot of individuals that come from different party backgrounds that are now going to be in positions where they're going to, have to work together.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not only like the people he surrounded himself with, like Tulsi Gabbard. She actually ran for the presidency as a Democrat. And she was on the debate stage with Kamala and with Bernie and Hillary. You know, this is like 2016 or 2020. And so she was full-on Democrat, and she just said enough. And so she just said, she doesn't want to do that anymore. And the other thing that's amazing is it's not just the flipping of, like, let's say, people of influence. You talk about Elon. But think about these unions that have flipped. like the Culinary Union in Vegas. Oh my gosh! Or you look at the Teamsters, and you look at the auto workers. I mean, that's unbelievable. The dock workers. I mean, that is really just saying a heck of a lot when the Democratic Party core base group of like blue dog workers are saying enough.
Well, that's what they've been. I mean, it's been all over the news where they say the current Democratic Party does not stand for what the Democratic Party is supposed to stand for, right? And to your point, we've talked about in the past where the past Democrats were more so about the unions, right? They weren't for big corporations, but it seems like it's flipped, and maybe that's why you had such a surgence towards voting right.
I totally think that. I think they have just undermined their core base, and really we're looking at things like these tech giants, right, to help support them and give them the money and the funding to sort of carry them through, along with the legacy media. What you saw this election cycle with the legacy media was their absolute implosion, unbelievable implosion. Like the winners of this election cycle, bar none, were people who were podcasters, right? Trump, tons of podcasts, right? You got Joe Rogan, he goes and does Tucker Carlson, or he goes and does some other ones that were like, million votes here, 2 million votes, and not votes, but let's say viewers, but young viewers, right? People who watch these things. He was on TikTok a lot. I mean, unbelievable savviness about, where to go to get that exposure and to start to diminish all of these false narratives about him.
What it's funny is because Trump wanted to get rid of TikTok, and now he is going on it, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he was all like, I don't know TikTok, and now he's like, bring back TikTok.
China, right? Exactly.
It's ridiculous.
It is funny to, when you think about it, like, he starts up Truth Social, so I think that was another maybe reason why he wanted to get rid of TikTok. That's just speculation on my part. But yeah, absolutely. I think that was so devastating that the Democratic Party, the presidential nominee, Kamala Harris, just did not do any of this sort of social media presence. She did it on very safe areas, safe ways, and limited, right? Nothing of a long exposure. Mm-hmm. And that to me was just the Achilles heel.
Yeah, that was the nail in the coffin. I mean, you had everything lining up and, occurring these past 9 months that were definitely like, okay, with Biden dropping out of the race, then with the attempted Trump assassination, these were big factors probably towards people voting for Trump. But really, to your point, the biggest thing for me is like when I see a Joe Rogan podcast hit 32 million views within one day, and then you sit there and you're like, okay, people are actually very intrigued in this guy. Because for a while, I think there were a lot of people that were hesitant on speaking their mind about Trump just because, of the emotions that go behind.
Yeah, you don't know what, and I think that's the other thing that people get sick of is sort of this shaming culture, right? Mm-hmm. This cancel culture, this virtue signaling culture. And everybody's like, I don't want a virtue signal. I want reality, Mm-hmm. I don't want to feel like we need to be kind to, 15 million people coming over the border and basically really putting a strain on our social services, schools, healthcare. How do you feed these people? How do you house these people? You had to displace like high schoolers in order to give enough room for some of these immigrants that were coming in. And I think people had enough of that too. They're like, are you kidding me? Mm-hmm. You can't do that, and it showed in the polls. I mean, it showed all over the place. Unbelievable. And that was awesome.
Well, I guess that brings me to one of the last questions probably for this segment is, going forward, how should the Democratic Party handle this loss? What should they do going forward in, trying to get back on track?
Well, first of all, don't nominate people from California. If you're a Democratic, don't nominate people from California. Why do I say that? California, even though it's the most populous state, right? And it's a monolith in the sense it's just purely Democratic. And so what happens is people that come out of out of California aren't battle tested. And that's what you saw when you saw Kamala. She was not battle tested because it's easy to win. If you're the chosen one in California, it's easy to rise through the ranks. You don't really get a lot of opposition, and you really don't get battle tested. The only time you get battle tested is when it goes on to a national platform. And in this case, you just saw that was just an absolute destructive battle. So that would be the first thing. I think the other thing is clearly you have to expand that footprint when it comes to the media, right? They have to start engaging in the social media space. And they have to start owning certain things that they were trying to do in that space, right? There was a certain thing where they were trying to have these misinformation or disinformation boards and trying to sort of curtail free speech, First Amendment rights. And you have to own that, right? You got to go in there and say, that wasn't a great idea. What we have to have is better ideas. When you go into that form of social media, you have to have ideas and then defend those ideas, and the best ideas win. And so I didn't see any good ideas coming from the Democratic Party. I saw a lot of good ideas coming from the Republican side of the House. There was a lot of interesting ideas there. They were all like, don't tax the tips. There was, I think, other things that they were trying to do as benefits for the auto workers by doing tariffs, making sure that things are built within the USMC or within the United States. I think there was a lot of things where they're looking to basically curtail some of the automation that people thought was threatening to. So they were having ideas. And I think that's the other thing people were attracted to that was because ideas spur thoughts, thoughts spur sort of visions, and people can see where things are going. But when you have no thought leader, you have no ideas, you don't know where the heck you're going. And I think that was the other side. Nobody knew what Kamala stood for or where things were going.
No, it's true. It felt more so like it was trying to reel people in based off of their emotions, but there was no substance behind the emotion, right?
No.
And that's kind of where I'm like, okay, if you want to try and attract people, yes, you need to have a plan and you need to have certain things that you're going to build towards, and that's what you sell. But because there was no building blocks even set in place, or there was no actual final product that they were striving towards, that's where you see the shift occur.
Yeah, I mean, think about what they were trying to sell. Their biggest platform was all around reproductive rights, right? And it's a good thing, but that should not be your
main.
Yeah, it shouldn't be your main thing. I mean, the other thing they put out there was so superficial, it was ridiculous. She's going to be the first woman. She's going to be the first woman of color that's going to be the president, breaking the. That's not, again. I don't care if you're the first woman of color or whatever. I don't care whatever you. If you come with great ideas, I'll vote for you in a heartbeat, and everybody in America would vote for you in a heartbeat. But that comes off as so superficial. And so sort of, I don't know, that was just those were your main points of your vision. That doesn't really take you very far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, we're now in for the next 4 years, and we'll see what comes, especially with the inauguration occurring January 20th. So to our viewers, be sure to stay tuned for more upcoming content. We're not going away. See you soon.